Thank you very much. And it's a special occasion for me then, I understand, because I see here in front of me all the leaders of the future. Is that the case? Yes. So maybe I should shake all your hands later on, because who knows how important you're going to be in the next years. And maybe then there's something that well, we can help each other with. Because, yes, I'm crazy about biodiversity, so I'm going to try to show you a bit how nature, and ask you some questions about how you think nature works, and what it means to how we work and how we collaborate. So this is really me. This is me nowadays, more and more. But here I'm studying in the Pyrenees bees and plants, how they interact. And I repeated the study from 1890, so more than 130 years ago. And you may wonder, it's just fun to do, that's clear. You already see that. But I also showed that the plants have moved 300 meters up the mountains and the bees only 200 meters, and they change. They change a lot. So climate change is real. And this is what I like a lot. But if I leave that knowledge for myself and in the scientific literature, it doesn't make much impact. So what we try to do more and more is link up with society. This is Naturalis in Leiden. Who of you has been there in the last 2 years or so? Okay. I hope you liked it and you've been to the public museum probably. But we are more than 200 years old, and the big tower is basically the natural history collection. We have 43 million objects, which is number 4 in the world. And for 200 years we've had those collections. We have 140 researchers that study biodiversity in all kinds of aspects. And we have a public museum. So it's very cool to work there. I worked at universities before, but then you do science. And here, yeah, you have a kind of logical link with society. So lessons from nature. What I like to do is talk a bit about diversity, about networking, about organization and collaboration. And let's start with biodiversity. That's the diversity in nature. So what is biodiversity? If you think of a word or a term, you can shout it. What? Biodiversity, what do you think of? Animals. Plants. Nature. Ecosystems, I hear, or something like that. You don't never think of biodiversity, yeah? Or, okay, go ahead.
How many different types of flora and fauna are there in a particular program?
So different types in a specific context. Anybody else?
Geonomics. Different geonomics.
Sorry?
Different geonomics.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Geonomic means different kind of gene sequence.
Oh, yes, of course, genetic diversity, those kind of things. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we're going to talk a bit about that. Okay, so it's all kind of different things. That makes it difficult. So climate, we have now captured, we are capturing a CO2 equivalence. It's not 100% correct, but it's something we can work with, we can count up, you can account for, and whatever. And biodiversity is a bit more difficult than that. So biodiversity is basically life on Earth. And that's from genes, you're completely right, genetic diversity, to species, and networks of species, ecosystems, and all landscapes. So that's quite a lot. So let's start with diversity within a species, because how many species do you see here? 1. And what's the name of that species? Wolf. Oh, well, it's basically the same species, So, but the funny thing is, so if you think of the genetic diversity, very good point. We humans have been very good in changing the diversity, genetic diversity from high in the wolf. The wolves are basically a very clever package of traits. That's why they're huge, we never see them. And they can kill sheep or they can do other things and they survive. These ones will never survive anywhere. They have one trait, according to some people, they're beautiful. And they can do 1 or 2 other things, and for the rest, they're completely helpless. So that's genetic diversity. This is a bag of traits that is made for survival, and this is kind of what we do to diversity. Similar to tomatoes, for example. Tomatoes in the supermarket are a kind of weak representation of the species that is the tomato, because it used to be resistant to all kinds of things, and now we have to pamper it to make tomatoes. Genetic diversity is really important. I worked on bees quite a bit. A bee colony, honeybee colony. You've probably seen one sometime. They are really fascinating. 20,000 workers there. And there's lots of studies showing that if the queen mates with more males, means you have more father lines in your colony, more diversity, then the colony is much better in task partitioning, much more flexible in its response, because some of these gene lines respond much quicker to danger than others, and all these kind of things. So if you talk about diversity, from nature you can learn that, well, genetic diversity is really one of the key issues of success. If a disease comes into a honeybee colony, and the colony is made of all same individuals, they will die or survive. If you have all different lines and different types in it, then part will die off, but the colony will survive. So genetic diversity is the first thing that's very important. And then species. Do you have any idea, by the way, how many species there are on the planet? If we don't count bacteria and viruses. So plants, animals, fungi, you name it.
500 million.
500 million. Who wants more or less than 500 million? More. How much more? 600 million. So who of you doesn't have a clue? That's very honest, yes. Who doesn't have an answer? Well, I don't have a real answer, to be honest, because there's quite a lot of it that we haven't discovered yet. But we think there's about 20 million species on Earth. 20 million. And then if you think of groups, which of the groups of species, like in the animals or in the plants or in the fungi, which of these larger groups would have most species? Any idea? Birds, insects, plants. Nodding. Nodding about what? Plants. Okay. No consensus, eh? Insects. Insects and spiders, these kind of things, make up more than half of the species. More than every other species is an insect, spider, or something else. After that, we have fungi. So now we only have insects, spiders, and fungi, and we are at 3/4 to it. So that's quite a lot. So three quarters are only that. Then you have a bunch of all these little invertebrates, or like mollusks, so shells and nematodes, worms, those kind of things. They make up quite a bit. And in the end, you get one group. That's the group of the 1%, and that's all the so-called vertebrates. So that's not only the birds, but birds and mammals and fish and amphibians and reptiles. If you go to Naturalis, you will have seen many of those. So basically, we are the museum of the 1%, because in Naturalis, in the museum, you see mostly these ones. But they're very rare, in fact, if you look at species. Most species are fungi and insects. And this is a nice picture of what we have done to the mammals on the planet. So this is an illustration of kilograms of mammals in the whole planet. So 20,000 years ago, about 100% of the kilograms of mammals in the world would be wild mammals, because it would be a few humans, but nothing else. So in this, especially the last 10,000 years, even more so the last 500 years, we've moved these wild mammals into a small corner of 4%. So 4% of the kilograms of mammals in the world are now wild. 34% of mammal kilograms are humans, 35% are cattle, and more than 60% are livestock and pets. So this is what we have done to the world. So mammals, 1%, nice, but one of my colleagues, somebody who works at the ministry, is now in India, and she hopes to see a tiger today. Well, good luck. She'll see many cows. She'll see many humans. I saw a tiger once in India. It was really fascinating, but you really have to be lucky to see these things. So this is what we do to the world. And this is also what we do to the world. And guess where do you find the most diversity? In a landscape that is more diverse, or a landscape that's less diverse? It's a silly question, of course. And you see here the species on top. The more homogeneous your landscape is, the simpler your system, well, it is only home for a few species then. So it's very clear where diversity is, and that we have changed quite a bit. Does it matter? Okay. Does it matter that species go extinct? Well, every species goes extinct sometime. So it doesn't matter that much. However, the rate of extinction now is 20, 30 times faster than any time before. And yeah, you may say new species emerge. Well, that's true for viruses and for bacteria, but not for mammals or for others. So many species disappear, but it really matters. Here's a very funny example. Ticks, they transmit Lyme disease. Okay, if you walk in the forest, if you come back nowadays, you have to check yourself whether there's no ticks on you. And even diversity of the mammals, of the species in the forest, has a link to your chance of getting Lyme disease. How does that work? If you have a very diverse system, with many of these different species, of which only the mice, here, these are the reservoirs. Here, the virus can, the bacteria that transmit these diseases can live in mice, but not in the other ones. So the ticks, they hop on random animals, and there are very few where they can really live and reproduce. So if you have diversity, it buffers the disease. If you have many of these mice and a few other ones, the disease spreads much more. So in general, you can say diversity buffers against problems, against trouble. So diversity matters because it gives you more options, like in the honeybee. It gives you more skills, also in the honeybee, because some of these groups of father lines are better in one thing, pollen collecting, and others are better in something else, defense. And you're more flexible, because you can lose out some species or some part of your colony, and you still do fine. So that's diversity. What about networking? Well, nature is the ultimate networker. Because you may not know, but almost all trees and many other plants in the world can grow much better, and some can only grow if they have a link with fungi. Because there's one thing that trees and plants can do better than fungi, and one thing that fungi can do better than trees. Any idea? What can trees do better than fungi? You have to speak up. You don't have a microphone, so speak up. Photosynthesis, yes. It converts sunlight into sugars. Very good. What can the fungus do better than the tree? More difficult, eh? Well, the nitrogen, well, in general, the fungus has a kind of kilometers of long network of hyphae, of small threads, and it has much more contact with the soil, so it has much more surface to get nutrients in. So they really have a trait. So the fungus can really decide with which tree it trades nutrients for sugar. That's really what's happening underground. So the flows of sugar can go one way or the other way, and the nutrients as well. So that's really a link, a network that's really essential. Here's another one. I work a lot on pollinators. 3/4 of our crops, of our food crops, are dependent on insects and other animals for pollination. No pollinators, well, means about 500 billion euros a year less value of our cash crops. 15 billion in Europe, 1 billion more or less in the Netherlands. So it's quite something. 90% of the plants are pollinated by trees, so by bees. So if you don't have bees, you don't have seeds and fruits, and our world outside will look different. So that's also a partnership that really matters. And if you would analyze a piece of soil from your garden, or this is from one of the Great Lakes in the US, a real picture where every sphere is a species and every line is a link between species. They eat each other, support each other, do whatever. Where the red ones are the plants, algae and other plants. The brown ones are animals that eat plants, herbivores. And the yellowish ones are animals that eat animals. So this system, you can already see it looks a bit like a trampoline. And you can imagine that the more layers you have and the more lines you have, the less likely you fall through it. I like that as a kind of symbol for nature, and that's how nature works. So nature's networking, that's how your networking skills have to develop as well. You're part of there, and if you have more links and better network, more stable network, then you have a better chance that you get the information you need at the right time from different sources, and that you can maybe sell your products or whatever you do to the other ones again. That's how nature works. And it gives you resilience. A good network gives you resilience. So you're not dependent on one supplier, on one informant, or one other person or part of your value chain. So that's what nature is about. And the problems in nature nowadays are that we remove many species from the system, which lowers the resilience. So then if anything happens, then it may even collapse. So that's quite a problem with it. And we know that because our energy systems, this is an electricity system, network, they're built up not like nice, well, this is kind of haphazardly built up, but there's all these cross connections to make sure it doesn't fail, or it's less likely to fail. Sometimes it does fail. I lived in upstate New York, that's here. So here you see the coast of New York. Of course, the coast doesn't look like that. Huh? This black thing is the blackout in 2003. I lived in upstate New York at Cornell University, really here. And that was the only day, I think, ever that the Empire State Building was completely dark. Everything was dark. There was a blackout in that whole area, all of New York State and part of Pennsylvania, whatever. Just because 2 of these power plants stopped working. So it was just a network without resilience, and it was really the only day also that in New York everybody helped each other. So this has some positive sides as well, but it was still people remember that. So networks are very important. Same with coral bleaching. Coral bleaching, you've heard about that, huh? That's basically divorce. It's a separation of a partnership between the coral, the white organism, and the algae that are part of it. So again, the algae are good in shifting and photosynthesis, changing sunlight into sugar. The corals are good in other things. This is a coral. The algae leave because it's too hot, and then you only get the white corals, and that's coral bleaching. So it's a divorce, the effect of a divorce in nature. So networks are really key, and networks give you resilience. So with bees, we have studied a lot. You may say, well, we have a honeybee, very good species, just one bee will do the trick. No, that's not true. Because it's very clear that if you have more species of bees, you get better fruits and a better seed set. Why would that be? Any idea? Sorry? Also diversity. They help each other. Yeah, and they bother each other even. So the funny thing is, if they visit flowers, then if one honeybee is there and the other comes, then they sit together nicely. If a bumblebee comes and a honeybee, then they chase each other away. And they fly off, and then they cross-pollinate even more, because they bring the pollen grains to the other one. So more species do a better job because they can do different things, and sometimes they are interfering with each other and all that. That's one of the very clear examples where diversity really gets better outputs. I think often that's the case. So networking really rules in nature. Networking rules. Because as a species, you think you're Homo sapiens, eh? One species. Well, about 2 kilograms of your body weight are other species. And that's why you're healthy. That's why you can digest your food. And there's all kind of, I will not dwell into that too much, all kind of animals and virus and bacteria on you, in you, and whatever. Eh? You're a whole ecosystem, independent of how long you allowed yourself to shower this morning. So networking really rules, and networking gives you more options, more resilience, more flexibility, and like in our body, yeah, really flexibility in what we eat and what we can digest. I've been a vegetarian for 40 years. If I eat red meat, I'll be sick. Really, I mean, I know that. Sometimes in Costa Rica or wherever where I am, they say, oh, it's vegetarian and it's not. I'll be sick. Just because my network has changed, and my network partners have changed. Okay, let's look at organization. How does nature organize itself? We are very good in organizing ourselves. I bet that many of the organizations you work are, or you looked at, or you have worked, whatever, have these hierarchies. Yes, yeah, too much. I can see as you're nodding, it's too much. Yes, hierarchies. Okay, there's another option, of course, to look at. Well, you have these hierarchies, but basically what happens around these hierarchies are sometimes even more important. Eh? You don't have to copy that, but you know how it works. There's all kind of things happening despite the hierarchy that we want to enforce on everybody that works. Yeah? I'll go on with this one, otherwise you... But you could also organize completely differently, like in a network. Everybody talks about network or self-organizing teams. I worked for 15 years on how bees self-organize. They are very good at it. But self-organizing teams or networks, that's another way of organizing. Do you have any idea how nature organizes? Let's ask you some questions. Okay, here you have a group of penguins. What do you think? Do they have, as a group, a hierarchy or a network or something else? What do they have? Sorry, network? Who is for a network? Okay, who thinks a hierarchy? Who thinks something else?
I think both.
Both. Clever. Why both?
I think they still have some hierarchy.
Yeah.
Maybe distribute food or something. And absolutely they have networking. They need to cover themselves, their companies, or isolate them from the cold weather.
Yeah, that's good. So you also say, well, it depends a bit what you do, maybe. So that's already, that will be the conclusion. You'll see. Well, in fact, these penguins, they look all the other way. They're all there individually. But you're right. If it's very cold, they huddle together. And the funny thing is, so it's not really a hierarchy because it's more like a network. But normally they're on their own. If it's very cold, they huddle together. If you're on the outside, then sometimes the ones on the outside get cold, go in, and then the other ones go out. So it's not that somebody shift. No. It's just like self-organized. Here's the next one. Chickens. What do chickens have? Hierarchy or a network? Hierarchy, which we call the pecking order. Yes, and you're right. I have some chickens in the garden, and they've changed hierarchy recently. That's also what happens. If they grow or whatever, you get new ones. So that's really a hierarchy. So if you look at chickens and you give them food, it's always the first one, the same one that eats first, and then the other one, and then the other one. Very clear hierarchy. So hierarchies do exist in nature. What about the honeybee colony? Does it have a hierarchy or a network? Hierarchy, because? The queen. We have a king. Do we have a hierarchy? He would love to, maybe. I don't even think he would love to, but no. We have a king, but do we have a hierarchy in the Netherlands? No, not dependent on the king. No, in the honeybees, there's a queen, but you could see the queen as the kind of egg-laying machine in servicing all the workers, or you could see the queen as the head of the family. And it's both a bit. So, in fact, a honeybee colony, the queen is more or less ruling, but there's a whole network of the foragers. They really inform each other, communicate, and do all that. So this is kind of a funny mix. Here's another one. Hierarchy or network? These are bonobos, by the way. Yeah? You have chimpanzees. Those are the war apes, and the bonobos are the peace apes. And they have, they have hierarchy? A hierarchy. Yes, they have a matriarchy. So the females have a very clear hierarchy. And the female hierarchy is much more important than the male hierarchy. Remember that, eh? You have to remember that. Bonobos. Very special. However, there's also one case where they really have a network. Sometimes they go hunting. They go hunting for other animals. And then they really have to work together. And then they have different roles. So they have a goal and they have different roles, and then they work more as a network. Once they have captured the prey, then I guess the hierarchy comes in again, and the top female will be the first one eating and sharing the food. But in between, they have a mix. What about the forest? The trees in the forest? Network. Yeah, as I said already, yeah? So they have a real network. And they're basically on their own as species, but this is kind of a web, a food web or a food chain, like a value chain a bit. It's a complete network. So you see that it's all different every time. What about your family? Very personal question, eh? Do you have a network or a hierarchy in your family? Hierarchy. Oh, that was a very... Anarchy and hierarchy. Did I hear the anarchy and hierarchy? Oh, no, just hierarchy. No, yeah. So, but you see, for some things it's a very clear hierarchy, but for other things it's a mix, and it's changing also. So it depends on the goal that you have, how you have to organize yourself. That's very important. Even within the species, as I said, for the bees or for the bonobos, depending on what their goal is, they organize themselves differently. So it's not that you have all go hierarchy or all go these other ways, self-organizing or whatever, but you have to choose the goal because some things work better for one goal than the next. There's also flexibility within the species, and if you have a network, here the idea is of the hierarchy, well, if the boss tells you A, then the sub-boss tells you A, and then the other, you don't need much communication. You communicate one thing and it just trickles through. Not always true, eh? But here you have to communicate a lot if you have a real network. So bees communicate all the time about everything. consciously, subconsciously, odors, sounds, everything. Because, yeah, you're very adaptable if you have one or the other. One funny thing, you all have been to the supermarket in the Netherlands, I guess. You have the Albert Heijn, one very close, and you also have Lidl. If you go to the Lidl, so they have a completely different way of organizing. You probably haven't noticed it. If you're at the Albert Heijn, they have a strict hierarchy and task division. So you have some people that are hired to refill all the stocks, and others are at the checkout. So you're always with your car behind the people that are refilling the stocks, and then in line for the checkout. If you go to the Lidl, they don't do that. They have a kind of network system in the sense that if there's a line at the checkout, somebody puts on the buzzer and somebody else gets down there and has the other checkout. If there's no people, they stop and they go do something else. So that's a very flexible task division, completely different system. Have a look at it. Of course, you have to be crazy and study bees for a long time to see that, but it strikes me really that even among these supermarkets that just say do the same thing, they don't do the same thing. They very strictly do different things. Okay, what about collaboration? Do they collaborate? Wolves and sheep? No, not really, eh? No, I don't know how they managed to get this, but of course they don't. They eat each other. Well, the wolf eats the sheep. Although dogs eat many more sheep than wolves in the Netherlands. Eh? Everybody talks about wolves killing sheep. Well, they kill probably a couple of hundred sheep. Wolves attack and kill about 5,000 sheep in the Netherlands a year. Many more. But dogs are part of our family, so we don't talk about them. But by the way, what about these vultures at the zebra carcass? Do you think they collaborate? Or they compete? They collaborate. They're scavengers, and that means they collaborate. Yes, but do they allow the others to meet, or is this one just saying, hey, come on, here, there's some nice zebra here, or is it trying to get the other ones off? No, they don't really collaborate, to be honest. They really fight for their food. But if you're with many, you can collaborate and chase another one off. Like these ravens, they can chase off the wolf, so they do collaborate. And what about bees and plants then? Do they collaborate or not? Who thinks the bees and the plant collaborate? Okay, and who thinks they don't collaborate? Nobody thinks they don't collaborate. Well, they really don't collaborate. No, it works, but it doesn't mean they collaborate. Because what the bee wants is a restaurant that's an all-you-can-eat 24/7, basically. The bee looking for food. And the plant is looking for a most reliable postman to transfer the pollen grains from one plant to the next. And you may think that's the same, but it's completely not the same. So there's many cases where bees, for example, here, this bumblebee is robbing nectar. Well, the plant is a whole design based on you go in here, you get your pollen grains, and then you drink nectar, have a long tongue, and you go there. No, this bumblebee just makes a hole and steals the nectar. You have also many plants, many orchids, that have beautiful flowers but don't have any reward for the bees. So they just trick the bees in mating with them because they think it's a female or something else. So plants and bees don't collaborate. Flowers and bees don't collaborate at all. But it still works. That's a very important lesson because it means even if you have different goals, it may work out if you're aware of what you do. It can also lead, by the way, that's through evolution, of course, a very long process. It can really lead to a lock-in. These are flies in South Africa, and this plant, here you see part of the flower, but it has a very long, thin tube where the nectar is. So the fly has to land there, has to get its tongue all the way down the tube, and then it gets nectar. So this is like a real lock-in in your value chain, isn't it? I mean, once the flower disappears, this fly will be completely silly and useless. It will be no other flower. It can't even land on the flower, and then it's with the tongue, whatever, doing whatever. And the plant, if this pollinator disappears, yeah, there's nobody who can pollinate it, because it has the nectar hidden too far away. So that's also nature. Sometimes you have these lock-ins, because for a long time it's stable, and you think it will be rain stable. Well, they don't think, but it's stable and it works, and you have a real lock-in, and that's where most of the extinction occurs. In these cases where you have no resilience, no, you have a one-to-one network, no resilience, and there's a real lock-in, and things may go wrong. What about our football teams? Are they collaborating? I think these ones are doing better than the males, but do they have a common goal? Yeah, well, literally have a common goal, but you also know that there's a whole lot of organization around them to make them collaborate. You would think that, oh, you put 11 people on the pitch and they can find out how they work. No, there's coaches and staff and schemes and whatever. So for humans to collaborate, it's quite difficult, to be honest. Even though they all love it, and they would all love that big will be world champion or European champion, whatever. It's hard to achieve that. So collaboration in nature also goes all ways, and in humans as well. So I think the lessons from nature are very much that diversity matters, really, because it gives you resilience and more options, like networking. Networking is really the key to success. And if you organize yourselves, think about what your goal is, and with whom you organize yourselves, and how you do it. And I'm sure you've thought about, I'm curious about your solutions later on, so I'll stay to listen to your experiences, because I think with the challenges of sustainability in the future, the way we organize, the way we collaborate, is really going to be different. And if you need to collaborate with people and partners that are not from your group, well, you have to communicate more. Our collaboration with KPMG is very nice, but of course we speak completely different languages. So you have to invest a lot in communication, in understanding each other, in thinking about, hey, how are we going to do this? And I think I understand you, but I don't understand you really. So it's really hard work. But it pays off because you can then collaborate in ways that nobody can collaborate, and you can achieve things without having exactly the same goals, like the flowers and the bees, that nobody else can achieve. So that's what I like about nature and about learning about nature. Thank you very much.
Koos, thank you so much. I was really inspired. You told us a lot, or at least me, a lot of facts which I was not aware. About 20 million species. I was not aware.
You could tell me many facts that I'm not aware of in 20 minutes as well.
I'm not sure, but we have our own domains, of course. But some of the things, more diverse gives less diseases and better output.
Yeah.
That's a nice one. We are walking ecosystems.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Scary thought or nice thought?
Well, a little bit scary, but I knew it already. But also ecosystems is something which is very top of mind in my...
Yeah.
So about networking, when we do networking, it becomes better. But also from a system perspective, what I like.
Yeah.
That's also why we're here together. Systems together, take a look at the problem or a challenge, makes the solution better, is my view.
Yeah, and then if you set out the real goal at the end, but don't and force people to do specific things on the way, you can design the way to it as long as you agree really about the goal. And I talked to Avi, and you mentioned it, in these ecosystems that you try to develop with different partners. I mean, these are very cool. I do science because I'm curious how things work, and I can learn a lot from other people and working together. So yes, yeah,
that's where we share a common let's say, motivation. I also like a lot of knowledge, put it together, be inspired, but also be open to others who have a different opinion. That gives us creative, new insight. Koos, may I thank you very much. You really got me. I have a present for you. Okay.
It was good that the weather was so bad that I'm not by bike. Eh?
Thank
you very much. Thanks very much. Thanks. Thank you.
All right.